Welcome to Inside the Honors College, where we believe that wisdom and virtue is found when we learn together. Join us as we take an inside look at a community dedicated to educating the next generation of disciples and scholars. I'm your co-host, Taina Estevez.
And I'm Ellie Overman.
And for this podcast, we have one of our friends, Jackson. Ellie and I have both had him in colloquy, which is just our classes, right? And we've gotten to have a lot of really cool conversations with him. And so we're both really excited that he was able to come on here and talk about his journey through honors. I can't go talking about Jackson and not call him out for all of his nerdy glory and Star Wars. I will say, just to preface, I too am a Star Wars fan. I have a lot of love in it from my heart. Jackson is on a completely different level, as everyone will see here momentarily. But I think it's beautiful. Star Wars does have a beautiful soundtrack, and Jackson can talk about it very, very passionately.
Yeah, I loved that. It was so fun to kind of get to hear him talk about even just Star Wars for a minute, because it's just near and dear to his heart. I think it was so fun to also just kind of get to hear his story. I'd never gotten to hear that before. And also just hear what he's learned through the Honors College about communication and how important that is for scholars and for leaders alike. And then also just this idea of learning to listen through his close friendships. I thought that was really beautiful. So I'm excited for everyone to get to hear.
Absolutely. Me too. And I think these are really nice conversations to have, especially on a podcast format, making sure that we can take something away when you're just listening to someone. I mean, and not just listening. Listening is the most important part about any conversation. So this is really good. And I think everyone will get something to glean from Jackson's beautiful conversation. So let's get right to it.
Oh my goodness. Hi, friend.
Hello, Ellie. Good to see you.
Yeah, so good to see you too. I am so excited that you're here. Guys, for anyone listening, I had Jackson in colloquy last semester, and he has the most insightful comments probably of all time. And so I'm just super excited to hear kind of where that's coming from and hear his story. So I am just so excited to have you on today.
I'm honored you would say such a thing about me. I don't know that I would ever think myself that highly, but I thank you for the opportunity to be on here, and I'm honored that you would pick me to be somebody to be interviewed for this.
Of course. I'm super excited. So let's hop right into the icebreaker question. What is your favorite movie of all time and why?
If I had to pick one, that's a little bit harder. So I think I'm going to go with a whole series. You know this because you've seen my background in my room. I have practically a Star Wars shrine in my room. I've been a massive Star Wars fan most of my life. If I had to pick one episode, it would probably be a coin toss between episodes 6 and 3. So that would be 6 being Return of the Jedi and 3 being Revenge of the Sith. So two great ones, but I can't pick one just because I'm a true Star Wars fan of all of it,
Yeah. And then why? What's the reason why those are your favorite of all time?
I think that what's been so nice, kind of, I guess for those two movies specifically, episode 3 just has incredible. Star Wars as a whole has a great movie score, but episode 3 does it almost even better because the emotional pull, I think, was just phenomenal. The fight scene between Anakin and Obi-Wan is just incredible choreography, but then the scene at the end of that is great. And then I think episode 6 just being really the first pinnacle of like everything adding together, and this like huge turning point because you're not sure, is Luke going to turn to the dark side, is he going to keep it? It's just great, very great storytelling, I think. And I think that episode 6 did it superiorly to most others.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. I'm watching through all of them right now. So I'm gonna mentally note and be like, okay, Jackson says this is the best one. And keep that in mind. So that's some solid advice. Okay. So let's get right into it. How did you hear about the Honors College, and why did you decide to be a part of it?
So I was a Trustees finalist. So for those of you who don't know, Trustees is a competition, or it's not really a competition. It's a scholarship, I guess, that individuals with certain statistics, I think, coming out of high school, I'm not exactly sure what those numbers were, but certain ACT, certain GPA, things like that, will compete for the scholarship. The Trustee Scholarship is a full academic scholarship. And usually there are 40 finalists. So you can have a pretty long list of people that will try to get it, and then they'll have a finalist. And that weekend, I went to APU, and to be a Trustees, you have to apply for the Honors College. Made incredible friends that weekend, some of the best friends I've ever had, some of which I am still best friends with. In fact, my best friend at APU was also a Trustees finalist, which is super fun. Yeah. And what I think I realized what was going to be really neat is, so if I'm honest, I came out of high school a little bit doubtful of my success. I actually wasn't sure that I was going to be good at college because I felt like there was a possibility that my success in high school was a fluke. And so having this idea of potentially reading great books and all these things was kind of intriguing to me because I had not had any experience of that in high school. One thing I think that is very different between the honors college and this is something I can confirm after being an honor student more than high school. But I think in most high schools, it's a lot of take in information, regurgitate. In the honors college, it's much more of a critical thinking thing. And that is just such a neat skill and a neat opportunity that I just didn't have in high school. And so I think that kind of intrigued me. It made me a little scared because, again, I had never done it before.
Understandably,
but, trustees and that, I think, were the two things that kind of promoted that opportunity for me in my mind and gave me the confidence to try to pursue it.
Super, super cool. And now that you've been a part of honors for such a long time, like what have you learned and how have you grown as a leader and a scholar through your experience?
Ooh, great question. Great question. So I think that the biggest and most invaluable skill I would say that the honors college adds to you, and I would say you can't put a price tag on it. I think it's almost unique in that aspect because I've been as an academic, I'm somebody who loves to learn, period. And so the opportunity to get to read books like this is just fun. But I think the skill that I never could have foreseen necessarily that I would have had is communication. And one thing that the honors college does, and Ellie, you're very familiar with this, but we spend time reading these books, which is taking in information. We spend time writing, which is written communication is huge, and not just writing, but writing about things that matter and things of eternal value and are complex and difficult sometimes.
Right.
We spend time talking about those things, and so there's a listening component, right? You're listening in class, you're listening to lectures. There's a reading component, so you're taking information through your eyes, right? And trying to work through those. And then there's a communication component, which is either through the oral component of class, just colloquy, or even speeches.
Yeah.
And so I think that skill of being able to communicate clearly, orally, in writing, in addition to being able to listen to good details and things like that, it's just a skill that has done a lot for me, I think, as a scholar, because if you can communicate clearly, it doesn't matter what your field of study is, you will do well. Right. And that skill is equally necessary, right, as a leader, because as a leader, you need to talk to people. You need to tell them exactly what you intend for them, but you also need to be listening and hearing the right things. And so I would say that because communication is a two-way thing, right? This is a conversation. This isn't just, yes, it's an interview, but it's a conversation. Yeah. It's a thing where you have to be able to understand what the people you are leading need. And you have to understand that you have to make sure that they understand exactly what you expect of them. And I would say that the Honors College has done an exceptional job of developing those skills in me. And I would say that right there, that singular skill almost is upon which the success in all those things that you said, I think as a scholar and a leader, hinges directly upon.
That communication, that is so wise and so interesting. What has your journey towards learning how to listen looked like?
Ooh, that's excellent. Well, I think what's kind of funny about that, so I'm sure some of you listening can probably tell I'm a little bit of a talker. And so not that that's necessarily a bad thing. At least it's not a bad thing, I think, if you have something to say. And I think I had to learn to do that. And I think a lot of that actually came from listening to other people. One of my best friends, his name's Colin Welge. For some of you probably in the honors college, he's a senior as well, just like me. And one thing that he does is he's just such an articulate speaker, but you only realize that, right, in the way that you listen to him.
Right.
And so it was people like him who I had the opportunity to listen to in regular conversation and in colloquies as well. Right. Where I started to realize how articulate, how precise his language was. And also realizing that when I'm not actively listening, I would sometimes be thinking of what I'm going to say next, and that's not listening. And the double recognition of, shoot, I don't even understand what this person's saying because I'm not listening because I'm thinking about what I'm thinking. But also then finally getting that recognition of he is so articulate or she is so articulate and telling me about what they're talking about, that it inspired me to listen intently and then also in a lot of ways refine my own speaking, which is it's funny when somebody else almost acts as a mirror, you know?
So kind of having the opportunity to interact with people that were really intentional with how they speak kind of encouraged you to learn how to listen. Is that right?
Precisely.
Okay. Super, super cool. I love that. I'm reading a book right now called The Listening Life, and it talks about what you were just talking about this idea of like, if you're thinking about what you're going to say, you're not actually listening. So I think that is just so wise. And like even looking at the story of Jesus, he was someone who listened really intently. And so it's super cool and encouraging to me to hear that you learned that through the Honors College. I think that's really beautiful.
I love that. You'll have to send me that the name of that book and the author when we're done with this, because that sounds something super interesting. And I'm adding to my book list. You know, graduation coming up, so
you'll have some time. Maybe that would be awesome. Yeah, I'll for sure send it your way. Okay, so after you've kind of like learned all of these things and experienced the Honors College after sort of 4 years, if you were talking to a prospective honors student, what is one piece of advice you would give them, or multiple? I'm not going to restrict you to one.
Thank you. Ooh, that is a great question. I think to be succinct, I think I would want to encourage anybody who is wanting to potentially go into the Honors College or who might be kind of on the fence about it, that actually, and it's funny, I've really only started to realize this actually having conversation with my dad. My dad is 48. I think I'm the oldest of 4, so that's why my dad might be younger than some of the listeners on this. But one thing that I've realized, I think, is that anybody and everybody can be interested about virtue, can be interested about about great ideas, metaphysical ideas about what is the soul and what is human purpose, and philosophy and these things, that how to live the good life, all these questions that are pursued, and hopefully the answers are hopefully suggested. I don't know that any of us are going to find those answers to those things in college, much less human life altogether. But I would say that anyone can be interested in the pursuit of those things. It says a lot about somebody that has the foresight to be able to say, I'm 18 and I want to pursue that right now.
Right.
And that's a lot. That is a huge, I think, academic maturity, and I think more often than not, I would doubt most honor students honestly have the recognition of what they're actually stepping into when you're 18.
Right. Yeah.
But my dad has been reading like books like Marcus Aurelius. He's been reading books. He's reading a book by Cicero, I think, right now.
Wow.
Art of War. Like these books, like a lot of them, interestingly, that we have read, or some of the ones that are very similar. Something that could have easily just been slid right in.
Right.
And so with that, I think because anyone and everyone could be interested, why not try it? Why not go for it? Go try for a year. Because I think in a lot of ways, if you spend a year in the Honors College, some of your GEs are going to be the requirement is going to be gone anyway. Even if you decide you don't want to be a part of it, it's totally fine. And the other part too that I encourage you is that it's not the last time you can have this opportunity to potentially deal with these ideas. Sure, it might be one of the first times and perhaps maybe one of the last times where you're in a very intentional environment where you get to discuss these things with people that are of your age group, and also to be led potentially by fantastic professors, because we have exceptional professors from all kinds of disciplines in the Honors College.
Right.
And we love them. They're fantastic and they tell us amazing things. And you start to realize, if I read this from the perspective of a language expert, I'm going to read this totally differently than if I read it from a philosophy background. I mean, it's just incredible stuff. But I would encourage potential honor students to take that leap, see what it's like, because you might absolutely love it. And I think that there's something super special and value giving, I think, that the Honors College, at least for me personally, has done to my entire education experience, because I think there are few places where you learn how to think, where you learn how to talk to people who have very different ideas than you do, or different ways of understanding things. And I think that the Honors College provides an exceptional place for that, because I don't think I need to really even give examples, but I mean, we live in a world right now, that is so politically divided that we have a very difficult time having conversation with people that differ in political ideas than us, religious ideas than us. We live in cancel culture, right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't agree with you. I'm not going to talk to you. And that's not how we will ever make reconciliation between groups. But that is not how we will love people, right? It's not saying, I dislike you because you think something that I don't think, rather than trying to understand you.
Right.
And it's a Dr. Glyer paraphrase of a St. Francis quote, but seek first, understand.
Yeah.
And I think that the Honors College does a very, very good job of putting that up front. Try to understand the reader.
Right.
You can't read as a Christian reading Nietzsche and then go like, what are you doing, right? This huge, scary atheist, without recognizing that you can try to understand them. And so I think I would say to either my past self or somebody else who potentially was wanting to go in the Honors College, to try it, see what you think. And also to not be scared that like, if I don't do it now, I'll never get the opportunity. There are other opportunities to read many of these books.
Right.
And I mean, I think the Honors College is doing some exceptional work now, trying to keep these students connected and to give people more opportunities to get to seek out stuff that are like colloquy. But, the Honors College is so special, and I can only really speak positively to it. And I really honestly would suggest anyone and everyone who has even a slight leaning toward enjoying reading and thinking would love it. So, and I'm a biology major. This is coming from somebody who does not, who is
a very
not as far
person. Yeah. No, I love that.
Exactly. My other major is not at all related to the humanities. So I'm telling you this from a very different perspective from some others.
Right. That is so solid. I feel so like privileged hearing that I get to kind of be a part of this for the next 3 years. And so I kind of hope that anyone listening kind of totally takes your advice and just goes for it, because I think it's worthwhile to start the process sooner rather than later, and alongside other people, kind of like you were talking about. So thank you so much for sharing and for taking the time today to just sit down and talk and share some of your wisdom and knowledge. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me. I have really appreciated this. I really hope that if anybody actually has any questions and they actually want to hear more of my story or have any more questions for me, please feel free to, you can, I don't know if there's anything that you can do to like link my email on this. I'm more than happy to answer any questions in the future about any of this kind of stuff. Because I'm very passionate about the Honors College. I'm sure that somebody can tell by now. But
it's super evident in the way you speak. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Jackson.
Of course. Have a great day, Ellie.
Man, I love any conversation that has anything to do with communication, man. I think it's just such an overlooked skill that people often throw in conversations about why it's important, about why communication is vital, but it like really is, So I love that Jackson spent that time talking about why that listening and just the way that we learned through that in our writing and our reading and honors, and just being able to take that outside of honors as well. These are things we're going to be using in life, in our communities, in our conversations with other people that, maybe didn't have honors experiences, So it's just such an important skill to have as a person going through life with other people. And it sounds simple, but these are nice things that you can glean from simple conversations like this. I think that's part of the beauty of all of this. So I really appreciate it, Jackson, taking the time to look at that stuff for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was really encouraging to me how he talked about communicating complexity and how that's a skill he's had to learn. As our texts have gotten more complex, it has been harder and harder for me to kind of communicate that to friends and to peers and to the class. And so it's encouraging to me to hear that that's kind of a skill you learn over time. And I think that is so true, and that colloquy is the perfect space to test out this communication of complexity and to learn how to kind of resonate with, create this culture of resonators that we talk about, like resonate and listen and communicate with each other. So I was just really encouraged by that.
I totally agree that having that community is super important. And if you want to maintain that, you need to make sure that you can talk and listen to the people that you have around you. So these are all beautiful things. And we can't thank Jackson enough for being a part of our own listening and conversation and community. And, thank you all for taking a time inside the community dedicated to educating the next generation of disciples and scholars. See you next time on Inside the Honors College.